then that's going to be the same format, the same everything's what everyone's going to end up using. So that
you can track your stuff.
yeah, exactly. So we're trying to get out of the everybody's confused.
All the ad hoc.
Yeah, all the
Well,
habits.
again,
Exactly.
it's your first year, safety issue.
Right.
Pods has got it down there, it's a new brand. You got a lot of monkey mentions, safety, like the roads and
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah. And she said, we can call things anything we want to call them.
That's right.
So she's, because the capital stuff gets very confusing to some people. So she said, if we have better names, just let her know. She was bringing up spreadsheets.
Oh, yeah, it'd be much better. But I looked at the road spending before we started. I looked at the road spending out for the next 5 years. What we have proposed in the capital very nicely fit within the regular budget and not make up that, especially if we plug it to what we were talking about. We got a lot of opportunities.
Okay, we just need to all agree what we're going to do and get it in one
We're getting-
official.
We're
view.
getting there.
Yeah.
Tell her about it. We're getting
Well, I hope Ted shows up. Hi. I put two things on the walk on. I wanted to get status on the RFP and then the project list we were talking about. Okay. I probably should have sent that in, but didn't.
We're ready.
Yeah, for that, I'm just gonna keep an eye on the time, do you?
They need quorum.
I was gonna say, do we have,
Yeah.
let's look, do we have a quorum?
I don't think so. So I'm kind of hoping our pedals at the last minute.
Well, I knew Ted Crawford's out of town.
Oh, he's out of town? Okay. Oh, I know Dean's not gonna be here and Cece won't be.
We need 4.
So
For those online right now, there's only Danny Clemens and Jennifer Nason in the room for the meeting for safety and security.
And Jay,
Oh, sorry.
you can join us with us. Yeah, yeah. Both Jay and Cece were approved with the last meeting.
We need 1 more.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're gonna have one more. Okay, he won't be here. Cece said she wasn't gonna be here and Dean said he wasn't.
Well, Dean, up north, he'll be on that if he comes.
I had the impression he wasn't even gonna be online today.
But I mean, he can't constantly call.
Well, yes, okay, true.
CC's
She's out of town.
she's out of town.
one?
She told us last time that she would not be here. And it looks like she probably told Georgia too. Well, this is Jennifer Nisanoff. It's 11 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. At this time, I don't believe we have a quorum, but we can continue on and at least discuss the items and keep things up for the next meeting. Let's all stand for the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's do a roll call. We can go around the table and then we can go around the perimeter. This is Jennifer Nisanoff from the Safety and Security Subcommittee.
Daniel Clemens, Subcommittee.
Jay Gann, Subcommittee.
Daniel Potter, GSCDD Public Works Director.
Randy Bottleson, Man Reader 2.
Mark Thompson, Wiseman Security. Marty Vankenfeld, PPAC.
Jim Bollinger, PPCA.
John Stewart from Bellagio.
Bob Gefford, GSCBD.
Carol Hancock, GSC.
And I just be back, safety security liaison.
Skipped him, Bob.
And on line,
Online, we were joined by Laura, Chelsea, Yannabelle, and Nathan,
okay, terrific, thank you.
and Georgia. She just popped up.
Oh, okay, great. All right, again, we do not have a quorum, so we can't have votes, but we can talk through these items and at least get some discussion going and some status discussed.
Can I jump in for
Yes,
public
sir.
comment first?
Oh, yeah, I was gonna get.
So last go around, we asked for Wiser to start showing up and having a rep come through. I asked Mr. Mark Thompson back here to come in and just give you a quick update and have a conversation piece there to begin the meeting.
Great.
And I know he wants to run and go take care of the duties that he's got, so I just wanted to front load him if that's okay with everybody here.
Sure. I'd like to also suggest that we front load Bellagio, because we do have, it's the last one on the agenda, but unless you'd like to attend the entire meeting, maybe we can front load that one as well. Can we front load it?
Yes.
Okay. So if people don't have an objection.
Okay, Mark Thompson again with the Wiser, just to reiterate. Everybody's doing, as far as the residents go, you guys are doing fairly well with calling in. Please know that it does happen a lot with the residents not calling in. I know it's not everybody, but Dwelling Live has been down at times. It's nothing to do with us. We've been in contact. At times it does not, so we don't receive voicemails. Due to that, we are calling and I'm following in as well. So if you guys get something or you get a call saying I called that in, please let everybody know. We understand you probably did, but we're still gonna call you and or follow them in if nobody answers at the line, okay? The other thing is with the new signage out front, I know there's been some word, but we're getting tremendous response, positive for the obnoxious, what some may call for safety and security. They love that. They love that. And I've spoken to numerous residents included. I don't know if it's all, and there's a lot of people that live here, but they enjoy it as well. I know it's obnoxious, like I said, to some people, but it is, if it's cold and it works, safety is our number one concern at that gate. And as well, residents, please tell everybody, since Ian, that scanner on the resident side is about half as strong as it used to be. You gotta stay to the right, okay? It's also happened a few times and KW has known about it where April 1st came through and both sides weren't working. They established they should both be working all the time now, just as long as you stay to the right-hand side on the resident side, okay? A lot of people don't know that. Also, with the gatehouse, you guys notice on Tree Line or many other places, I've been to numerous, gatehouses are all windows. Unfortunately, ours is not. We cannot see the overhead. We cannot see the signage for a truck that comes in undersized with the tailgate on the other end. And it happened with the grapple. We can visually see it to here. We can't tell down that line because we're not visually accessed because of their non-windows, which are on every other community's gatehouse, if you look around. So due to that, we love the signage to let those truckers know we gotta go to the right roads. Ladies,
Would a camera help?
absolutely, camera would actually help right at the resident gate, and that would slow people down. Because it's dangerous out there, honestly, in the resident side. And I gotta do a lot, got truckers, people are bending around, trying to twist, and it's dangerous. So people gotta, I don't know what the hurry is to come in sometimes, it's your own place. So we are kind of confused about that, but a lot of times they like to show their speed in those trucks or whatever it may be, not knowing the speed limit or just punching it. Some people just don't understand, but we're there. So the safety stuff helps with everything at that gatehouse. So I hope that helps and just reiterate to everybody. And if you could do an email, I know Facebook is very popular, sometimes great, sometimes not. And it is Facebook, but if you could do a positive to stay to the right, residents all included, it'd be great. And also just slow down a little bit around the gatehouse. There's truckers coming in, we're trying to get them to the left so you guys can sneak by, but it doesn't happen sometimes. They don't speak English. Okay, so we do our best. Hope that helps a little bit. Mr. Dana, is that okay?
Is there any questions from anybody?
I
Anybody?
have a question about the
Sure.
camera comment.
Sure.
Okay, what would the camera be showing again? And how would that help? I'm not sure I followed that.
Well, it would help. Well, we do have a camera for the visual we really can't see the license plate unless we slow it down going through if it's a truck. So most times it should be a resident, correct? So
Mhm.
if a truck comes through, we don't have access to that view. Okay, and also for residents, that gate it gets wobbling, and when it hits the ground, and you just, it's one at a time is all. You know?
Okay, so the camera would be showing that the gate on the right, the entrance on the right, so you
If you're,
could see
if
what
you're
was
coming
happening.
into the community.
Okay, that's the part I wasn't following. Okay,
Correct.
gotcha.
I would think that the camera would be focusing on the trucks where you can't see the back end.
Correct. And that would
Okay,
show
see, so that's two different cameras then, wouldn't it be?
probably potential.
Or
that
cameras
would-
wide enough to be able to see
That
the
would be out of
whole.
my.
I don't know.
Okay.
But I know
I'm
we
just
already have a
wondering.
contract out there to install additional cameras.
We got one, we have two in the gate.
Yeah,
We've had them.
Inside the
Yeah.
gate.
Inside the gate.
The addition, placement of another camera is not gonna solve it. Not gonna. The access control person has to be alert in every vehicle coming in, sitting in a chair, excuse me, sitting in a chair, looking at the computer, when the cameras are already there. Needs to be done. We need to get up, move that chair outside a little bit, they can see every vehicle showing. Camera's not gonna work, we already have cameras there, they're not being looked at other than look at the plate number on the incoming vehicle at the visitor gate. It's not gonna solve the problem. Personal visual observations are the way that prevents another vehicle from coming in and hitting that top floor. There's no height parameters on the camera to tell you that's an oversized vehicle. Like with the last incident, you wouldn't have known that that forklift is not 9.6. So even if you had a camera, you would not be able to tell.
Okay.
We definitely could tell them to stay back and not have everybody reverse, for sure.
If you were watching the vehicles
Correct.
coming in and correct it, but the camera's not gonna solve that
Okay,
problem
Mr.
because you already have cameras there and they're not doing what they're supposed to do.
Understood.
Thank you, Mark. I
You're
appreciate you showing up today.
One
and,
last comment from Martin, you're aware that the security contract is. gonna be
Absolutely.
bid this
Yeah.
year, okay? Make sure you guys are sharpening your pencils.
You-
Looking for
Grass isn't always greener.
Looking for
Enjoy.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate you all letting him go first because I wanted to get him back out there to do his job. And I'd like to continue to probably quarterly bring them back in and just do an update. I'm going to try to formalize it a little bit more with him and working with his supervisor, his manager on what that looks like and what they're reporting. Whether that's how many people are accessing the gate, how many people are submitting for passes, things along those lines, just so we have some sort of KPI to measure against to see what the average flow is coming in and out through the gate.
We only tied him up for you.
The only KPI that I'm happy with is that the guardhouse has not been struck in a couple of months.
Knock on wood.
Okay.
All right.
Just to close out that discussion in the cameras, so we're not gonna put that
Okay.
on the list to continue, right?
And I just want to comment, that was Danny Clemens making those comments, objecting to the camera. And I think we need to pursue that.
Okay.
Just my
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I agree with that, Danny. Honestly, the camera would be great as an after fact if there was an incident or something along those lines to document, but it's not a precautionary item that would prevent anything.
It doesn't stop it.
Yeah.
After events,
It's not a preventative issue. It's not gonna stop anything.
watching the window like they shouldn't be, they can see vehicles coming.
Okay. All right, terrific. Any other public comment?
Yeah, that's.
I know Ed did some analysis. Is this matching up with what you did? Right.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
drop it down just a couple, another inch. There we go.
Need to explain a little bit, I guess. The. Slow it down, let's see. No, the other way. There we go. The last year, the O and M budget, 768.5 is what the assessments are calculated on. And to date, we're about 58% through the year, budget year, and you're at 70-some percent, right around 70% of your O and M budget has been spent. Some of that's some encumbrance. Laura has moved some of the capital, well, last year, so you had the O and M, and that was the 708. But we also did a project sheet that got identified as capital, but it had a lot of duplicative things on it. But for safety and security, you budgeted $285,000 in that capital budget for road repair and maintenance. But that was not ever, the funding for that was never identified by PPAC. And so today there's about 161,000 that's been journaled down into that for the Diamante Road resurfacing, the power washer equipment, and the pavers at Matarita too, that improvement of that entrance. And so we've approved Brino Drive, and then if we do the speed hump in this budget year, it looks like that might be about, line item might be about $200,000. Yeah, we'll have, feedback will have to figure out how to fund, because it's not really within that. But so we're kind of, next year, things will look a little different because we only have to account. We don't have a separate capital fund. Bob and I spent an hour and a half or so looking over it a couple of weeks ago. And I now understand a lot better how things are going to have to work going forward with itself. So there will be actual capital line items in our 002 budget that will have to fund separately or be included in the assessment. But just wanted to point out that you're at about 70% of your annual budget already, and we're 50-some percent of the way through the budget year, 58% of the way through the budget. So if anybody wants to know more details, I can go into as much detail as you want, one-on-one, but.
And if we exceed the budgeted amount, which we know we're going to this while, because we've taken on road projects that weren't budgeted in prior years. So, and as Ed just said, the challenge into next year's budget for this group will be to make a determination by dollar volume of what we think we want to spend on roads. And by roads are things like Diamante or Drano or Bellagio. And if we fund that to a $250,000 number in the O&M, or in the budget, right, not consider it capital, then we should be fine going out in the future. In other words, every year you got a pot of the $250,000, and then you just budget how many roads you're going to do in a given year based on that money. But the incidental, I use that term loosely, capital costs like the guardhouse, gate lighting, road striping, street lights, they also should be included in the regular operating budget. Even though there were capital expenses, but if you keep it in that budget, then your non-ad valorem doesn't vary.
What we had in this 24 budget year was that list of capital items had a lot of things that were also duplicated in the individual operating lines. And so we're going to try to eliminate that duplication next year.
Right.
And this was foreseen because obviously it's a new group. the only template we had is what Castle KW generated in the past. We just took that as being absolute truth and moved forward. So now we need to refine.
The good news, I think, is that we have a structure going forward, which is the not to exceed budget that's going to the Board of Supervisors. And I think one of the agreements that we do have going forward is that we're going to use this structure versus a lot of individual analyses that are going on because we all had different ideas,
Right.
different versions of the truth.
Different interpretations.
So we're going to have one version of the truth going forward. And the second thing I think that will help us is as we approve projects, we're going to indicate what line item is it going to go from? And approximately when do we think it's going to get charged? You know, it's encumbered, and then when do we think the money is actually going to go out? Because that's two different things. So we're talking about how we're going to get that organized going on into next year. So I think it's been painful, but I think all this pain is going to pay off in the future, if that makes any sense, because I think we're getting organized. And as Bob said, we're new, so.
Hopefully it'll
we'll
be
figure
totally
it out.
transparent to us a year.
Yeah.
Right now, it's
So.
Marty Mantz also, does the duplication of capital and O&M items give us an extra cushion for this fiscal year?
not for the current year.
Those capital items, the things that were on that capital list were never, it was more of a wish list. The funding for them was never identified.
That's right. Thank you.
Except as a capital item like the road. There was
Yeah.
dollars moved from capital reserves to safety on what we already spent. You haven't done it? I was approved by people.
So, okay.
Randy Bottles from Bannerita. Mark, you probably remember this, but a year ago, at budget time, PPAC was basically informed we don't have a good idea of what was spent last year. And primarily it was said because Castle's, Castle's financials don't, computer system doesn't work without something of that nature. And so Bob Gephardt put together a budget with big items. And then within a few days after that, it was on a July 18th meeting. The district asked for a $100,000 increase in the budget for this year for safety and security. And that's on their agenda. I don't know where all that money went, but primarily it was supposed to be for a new position in salary adjustments. I don't know how that factors in, but it should be taken into consideration this year so that we don't just continue to have this pile on of excess money that doesn't get spent and goes into a reserve. And then we're asking what's capital and the district just gets to decide where it gets put.
We think we have reached an agreement with the district staff for unspent monies that were allocated to ponds. They'll now be referred to carry forward as a ponds reserve. The same thing for safety and security. If we have any unspent money, that will carry forward to the next year. And for landscape, we partially resolved the ambiguity. The specific cost of the hourly person that we authorized this year, that's in a different part of our budget, but it's in our total budget. That falls within the 14% of the operating expenses over there. I hope that answers you, but I don't know. Because the way that guy was funded last year, you're exactly correct. We took a $62,000 line item for sidewalk repair and a $24,000 or $40,000 ponds cleaning of the boardwalk, not pressure washing. We moved that from being an expense item that we hired an outside contractor, and we moved that work in-house. It actually saves us money doing it in-house. So rather than spend that other 90-some thousand, now we were getting it done for 50-some by using our in-house resources. Did I confuse you or help you with that?
Well, yeah, no, I knew what the intention was.
Yeah.
It didn't get accomplished, unfortunately.
Well, partially no, because we didn't hire the employee, but from a budgetary point of view, the money's there. It's not gonna go away. If it's unspent, it's for this to be spent.
But what I'm cautioning people about is that we asked for $100,000, doesn't get allocated because it didn't end up being needed. Some of the things didn't get accomplished with it, but let's not just decide that, okay, we automatic 3%, automatic 5% on top of the budget. Let's make it, I'm suggesting that you just make it a intentional budget. Start from what you need and then go for it instead of just tacking on extra dollars. That I feel happens a little too frequently.
And we've learned a lot
Easy
in
way
the
to
last year. You're exactly right. We've learned a lot. It's starting with what we had from Castle. It was a shop development. The landscape, for instance, to your point, PPAC authorized $250,000 for landscaping.
Yes.
Come out of capital reserve. They never spent it. So landscaping subcommittee at PPAC has two choices. They could return that money to the overall capital reserve, or they could keep it in their budget, or they could give 100,000 or 150,000 to safety and security going forward to fund the roads. There's a lot of choices of what to do with that money. So, but at least in the future, as Jennifer said, we have a stake in the ground. It's numbers and categories we all understand. We don't have the ambiguity about what this meant, because that was very loosey-goosey under the Castle. Particularly when they confused the issue by putting shared resources in them, which was just a deliberate effort to keep everyone confused. My opinion.
Okay. Anything else about finances? All right. The first thing we're going to do under items for discussion is really the last thing on our printed agenda, which is the Bellagio road repairs. If we could go to that. I'll give a little introduction. Basically, the Bellagio HOA is requesting that we take a look at the possibility of some road repairs in Bellagio. And they have, and their pictures as backup to what they're talking about. We have somebody from Bellagio here today as well, so jump in whenever you'd like. Okay. So you've probably seen the pictures in the backup documentation in the agenda package. The other thing that you have in there is an analysis conducted by Mark, who went out, and maybe you can explain the background in terms of the analysis and
Yep.
how standard it is and what the numbers mean, et cetera.
I got you.
There's
So
a beautiful summary at the bottom, but for those of us
there
who
is.
don't look at this stuff every day.
I'm just going to go through each one of these real fast. So you saw the general assessment based off of pictures that were provided, which then sparked sending out Mark Rothenberger, who's an employee of mine, my maintenance supervisor, who's got 20 plus years in roadway experience. So he went out, he has a tool that he's created in the past to do general assessments and come out and actually do from front end to back end of a road, take a general assessment of all the gutters, the stormwater drains, just the whole road encapsulated. There's a point system that is in the background of this that basically, you look for major breaks, base being exposed, spider webbing, and all the items that would associate with damage to the road top surface. A lot of the roads here, obviously we've had the roads assessed by Tetra Tech, but a lot of the roads, you got to kind of do a sanity check because there's certain areas that are just high traffic, high volume on roads that heavy trucks get onto and they damage cul-de-sacs. Typically, you see most of your damage down in a cul-de-sac, especially where the apron comes back together in the front of a cul-de-sac from where they pave it, they come all the way around the backside of it, and they come back up and they tie those two lips together in the apron, and there's a lot of wear and tear there. So that was one of the items for Bellagio. It was also Diamante. Breno is also in that same category, and that's the reason why we went after that. Now, the general assessment for those two roads was a little bit more beyond just one patch or 1 point repair. I think on Bellagio, after Mark did his score assessment, it's at an 80% as an overall for the road, but there is a 20% deviation in there for point repairs. So this might be one of the first roads that we look at for doing a point repair in the specific areas versus doing an entire remill and surface of the entirety of the road. So that was what we were going to bring to you as our suggestion from the staff side of the house. Just looked at flexible potholes, the edges unraveling, if there's any shoveling out there and any depressions or bumps, paved shoulders, any turnout or polish cracking or any rigid turnout, something that's broken away completely and now you see nothing but, sub base of underneath the asphalt. So he kept going through and he looked at all of it, had a general assessment of about an 80% across the board.
When you say 80%, 80% good or
80% good, 80% good, 20% error
I
of,
want to make sure I.
Where does Bellagio fall in the Tetra Tech report where they assessed the water? They had a rating system where it was.
Yeah, we got a 5-year plan.
yeah, I want to say it was in,
Probably fair.
yeah, it was in fair, but it,
First 3 years.
yeah, it was in the middle. So overall score based on the location and the amount of space that he looked at, because he broke it up into segments, right? He looked at an entirety of the road and then he broke it into smaller segments and then just did an assessment across the board. And the whole road as a whole has just got some point repairs that need to be done. And I think that's evident in the pictures that Mr. Sarah provided for us. And I think if anybody goes out and takes a look at it, does a site assessment, you'll agree that there's parts of the road that are in general disrepair, and then there's parts that are still very good. They've got a seal coat on top of their.
Yeah, we were concerned about, because we've been seal coating this pretty much every other year.
Yep.
For the last decade. And we were afraid that we were masking some of the cracks. When we got the new analysis, and we were not of consideration to do the road work itself in the following 36 months, I was concerned, we were concerned that those cracks would develop something. So we asked, and luckily Mark Rothenberg came back out with another assessment. And I think he had a different assessment than we had. And that's all we were doing. We'll abide by what the first one. We want to make sure we weren't ignoring something. When we had a spot. Appreciate that.
This is part of, I thought the Tetra Tech analysis was considering the totality of the road and totally doing it.
Hey, Daniel, hang on just a second. Are you using the area mic? Because I can't hear the people that aren't sitting right next to the computer.
No, I never bring the area mic out here.
Can
Sorry.
you please make a mental note to do that going forward? Because I can barely hear the people in the background. And if I turn it up to hear them, then I get blasted when you guys talk.
All right. So we'll do in the
Thank
future.
you.
Between all or nothing is.
Can everybody just please use their outside voice? That's not by the computer.
Between doing the entire road or nothing had been the perspective of this group for the first, or not this group particularly, but of PPAC for the first 15 years. We are now exploring, as Daniel said, the opportunity to not redo a whole road, but to do point repair.
Yeah.
So the fact where Bellagio landed on the Tetra Tech report has some merit, it should be considered, but we're not suggesting that you do the whole road. We're coming up with a much more cost-effective way of taking care of the problems.
So Daniel Potter, Public Works Director, again, to reiterate, Mark went out and did that assessment of both Bellagio Drive and Bellagio Court. Both were roughly about the same. There was obviously clearly identified areas that need point repair. He's gone out and he's solicited quotes. I'm waiting back on some quotes. I think he's gotten a few of them in already. And that would be the item that I would like to bring forward to the next safety and security meeting so that maybe we can make a decision on what the dollar sign is associated with it and the repairs that we're going to try to do if you as a committee have the appetite to move forward with it.
And it would be 2025 fiscal year project. Not a
Correct.
current.
I'm not trying to put them all. Yeah.
And this is Daniel Fleming. 42's picture, there's 2 locations that we're concerned with, the front and the cul-de-sac.
I believe there's 3.
Here, I'll pull the picture back up.
There's 2, long distance. The entrance,
But the entryway,
cul-de-sac.
cul-de-sac.
Yeah, not being an
That's the entrance.
Those are main,
seal coating, and then I said, that's why I appreciate an expert coming out and competing that, you know, he knew exactly what was going on, what was done in the past, whether or not this should be a concern, that's all we request. The seal coat debate has been going on as long as I've been in this community. And depending on which day of the week it is, and who's telling you, it's great, best thing since sliced bread, where you're totally wasting money. I don't know where the reality is. My community has been painting our roof for 15 years, just like a lot of them. I personally like it. It looks pretty. Whether it has value or not, I don't know. However, Avila didn't do anything, and they were the first one we had a mill and dry. Versus Portofino, Bellagio, and Breno, you know, we were farther down the line because we hadn't paid them.
Yeah, this is Jay Gann. We've done that up north and seal coat, but we also did a fill, kind of like a point repair, but there was areas where there was a denser filler that could fill the cracks as a Band-Aid for several years. And it worked well, rather than just doing a
4x6.
clear coat and just coating it.
Yeah,
There's a
tar filler.
Right.
Yeah.
But we do have a resident in the community, Ken Terry, who spent his whole career resurfacing roads. His own company. He's an expert in this, and he's volunteered to help us.
This is Ed, and I agree, Bellagio needs something. But part of my concern is we start looking to 2025 budget year. From a budgeting standpoint, we're starting to look at a road resurfacing program, annual program. And I think we need to kind of take a little bit of a pause and do some more analysis to identify once we know what our budget is for next year, for proposed budget, what roads do we want to try to tackle? And it may mean Mark needs to go out and look at more of these roads to try to come up with, here's the hit list, and then what can we afford to do so that we could go out and get a bid and budget kind of as a package and get, rather than onesie, twosies, here's and there. I agree, Bellagio needs something on the list for next year. It's just, should we take a little bit more time figuring out what the others should be to try to tackle in the 25 budget year so that they can go out and get bids in the project, you know, all at one time, and that rather than a bunch of these small projects. And part of the problem with the Tetra Tech report was it looked at each street in its totality, which is probably okay for these neighborhood roads. But Pelican Boulevard was treated as one road. But from the gate to the four-way stop, gets the most traffic and the most big trucks and is in the worst shape. It should be treated as kind of a separate street segment versus the section between the four-way stop and Cypress Grove and that. So you could do them in pieces. But I think, you know, and Mark might be a good one to kind of help do some of that assessment over the individual, you know, Wild Nose too, that's done some of this.
I'll send that information.
Well, yeah.
To get together and, you know, use the Tetra Tech as a guide and to identify some of the worst ones, or, you know, come up with that list, you know, to tackle rather than doing one at a time as.
And the good news is, rather than just blanketing, say Bellagio, which would probably be close to $200,000 in totally built right. Here, we're gonna have a lower cost alternative, like just take these three areas. Hopefully then we can do more quickly.
I don't know, one of them wasn't, we got a bid for the cul-de-sac and for the whole thing, and it wasn't that much different, but shorter.
It was about a $10,000 difference.
So, you know, for not much more, you could do that.
And I think that happens on Brent.
But you have to see what some of these are.
Bruno went up, Bruno
It's
just went up a little bit, and it was right in that same
just kind of
ballpark.
made sense to do the whole street.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we're going to talk about, I don't know if we can do it today or we're going to do it in the next meeting, is a list of projects that this team is working on and who's taking the lead. Let's make sure we spread the wealth a little bit since we have a couple of new members on the committee. At one time, we talked about having a sub-team that would take a look at that Tetra Tech study and talk about, okay, if we were going to take a look at this, how do we want to say, okay, first year that we want to tackle this, second year we want to tackle this, the third year. And it would be, a first assessment, it'll change. Things like that always change, but at least start getting organized around that.
I would love to tie
So-
that, take it a step further and tie it to a capital plan. So
Yeah.
that you have a CIP of like, hey, these are the big items that we want to do over 26, 27, and the prioritization from this committee to
Right.
say what they want to do. That may change, but tying dollar signs that are associated with it too, so that if you need to build up a reserve in order to hit a project, you can do it.
As long as there's an understanding that we have a budgeted amount of 250 a year, and the only thing that would hit the capital is something that would exceed that.
Absolutely. I mean,
So we might not be tapping.
I just want to outline what big projects that are out there and tentatively put them on the map for a year,
Yeah,
a fiscal
2
year.
years look very favorable from that capital, as far as being able to fund.
because in addition to that, we have other things like, the FPL lighting project.
Yep.
And this is not the project itself. It's not doing the implementation. It's doing the analysis and the business case that we need to do. So we can make a recommendation
Does
about
it make
whether we
sense
want to
to
go
do it?
forward. Because something like that is going to have to go into the kind of capital plan that you're talking about.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Big ticket item.
yeah, big ticket item. So I'll just tell you, there's a list being created with all these projects and where we are right now. And what I've actually done is I've started off with a list that Daniel has on his SharePoint or on our SharePoint site. And then I went back through all of our meetings since about the middle of last year. I went through PPAC because I found some interesting things on PPAC. And actually went through a couple things on board of supervisors, but I didn't find as much there, and that makes sense. And so I just created this big list. And so I'm kind of hoping that in our next meeting, we can go through this list and talk a little bit about it so that we can start making sure that we have,
Can you put that on the agenda?
absolutely. Okay, so I was going to talk about that a little later, but since it makes sense to talk about it now. All right, let's go back to Bellagio for a moment. We can't do a vote at the moment, but maybe I can make a suggestion. Let's carry this forward to the next meeting where we'll have more information about how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
And then we can actually make a decision when we do have a quorum. Anybody have any questions or concerns about that before we move on?
No, I've already duplicated the item to take forward.
Oh,
It's
okay,
in the agenda system, so nobody has to put it in. I just have to get the proposals and put those in there for you guys,
Thank you.
which I'll have by the next meeting.
All right. Any other questions or concerns?
No, the answer to that, by the way, I appreciate everybody coming out. It's a lot of work to get it done, sure. We were just not sure what should be done, what could be done. And I appreciate the experts coming out. As the gentleman mentioned, I'm originally from Connecticut, and that the heat and that sometimes it's just a matter of a little patch, and if it's good for the next 2 years before you do that.
Freeze thaw.
Well, maybe that would be it.
I think why you don't see too much of it down here is the extreme excess heat. And once you, with the item that you're talking about is it's a street tar. When you throw it on these roads, it doesn't last very long. So it's not a very viable option here. Up north, all day long, because the temps don't get as extreme as they do here.
But the good news is we don't have the heat for freezing.
Yes, yeah, you don't have that
It's
extra.
track.
But we have a pothole here, it's an inch.
Yeah.
And you have a pothole in Michigan, it's a foot.
Yeah, someone mentioned something about potholes one day. I had to drive out there and see what pothole.
We've got a couple in there.
Yeah, yeah, we do. But to your point, I'm thinking potholes.
While you brought that
Okay.
subject up, I have sent out an email and I think everybody was CC'd for the committee. I'm trying to attach the potholes. There was about a $4,000 excess on top of Breno. I didn't hear anything back to the contrary of moving forward with attacking the items that are on Pelican, Preserve Boulevard. There's several potholes there that need to be hot patched. So I'm going to move forward with that if that's okay with.
We can't make a
I know there's no formal decision here. I was going to bring it back at the next meeting anyways. It was going to be something that I put in front of you retrospectively, but I'd like to have at least a informal head nod of I'm okay with that. It was work that we'd already discussed about before and
concerns.
definitely want to get it addressed while I have Atlantic Southern already out here mobilized.
Right.
We did bid it out for potholes across other vendors, and Atlantic Southern still came in at the lowest end of the spectrum for the potholes as well. So
Yeah.
you're getting a competitive price across the board.
Any concerns? Okay, we'll make the official.
Hearing that, I'm officially moving forward with that. On the 30th, they're slated to mobilize the night before to have their equipment on Breno. They're going to stage on Breno and properly with MOT cone it off as best as they can to keep it out of everybody's way. On the 30th, get rolling, and it should probably only take about 2 days to mill and then resurface. It's a fairly quick project. As
HOA is keeping the neighbors apprised.
absolutely,
We park
They have.
someplace else.
we've been working with them.
Communication's good.
And like you've seen already on like Diamante, once they get started, once they've got all the equipment on ground, once they get started, it's a pretty quick process. So if anything,
Don't walk on it.
no, please don't do that. Don't drive on it either.
It will stick to your shoes.
This is Danny Clem, we should make sure that KW sends a memo out to the community, out to track the construction that's gonna take place.
We'll do.
Were you about to say something or?
Are we coordinating with Ameriscape to fix the sprinklers at the monument while we're digging up the road?
I'm unaware of that. I have spoken with Javier about cutting the sprinklers off while we're doing the work.
I spoke to Javier Jr. He says their bid has not been approved.
Not approved by whom?
I don't know what the bid is.
I don't know.
They're right now, the monument, water comes from the house that's on the corner.
Oh,
So anytime
That's a
the
great
house,
program.
anytime the house on the
Unless
corner.
you own
gets
that
water,
house.
the Monument gets water. So they're looking at separating that, and they've submitted a bid. I don't know to who, I think.
it's probably landscaping.
Landscaping.
And from what I understand, Javier Jr. has told me, because I meet with him monthly, that it has not been approved. So the time, if they want to dig up this irrigation system, is when the road is going to be redone.
We're not digging that deep in the road. We won't hit any piping or irrigation.
Well, it's either that or you're going to triple the cost for the monument irrigation by tunneling under the road.
If that's what's required.
That will triple the cost. So Javier Jr. has told me that has not been approved. And they are still waiting to hear from them. And here the date for resurfacing Breno is fast approaching.
It's subdivision. Subdivision.
Only if you don't want to save money.
It's a lot cheaper to pay the work. Moving right along.
Okay. Let's go back up toward the top. The first thing in our items for discussion was to appoint a vice chair. That's going to require a vote. And I think it's important we have all the people here before we discuss it. So I'd like to propose moving that to the next meeting.
We have a volunteer.
Not that I know of. Okay, next is an update on the speed hump. And we have some good information there.
Long delayed speed.
Long delayed speed hump.
How about the Randy? This one's 3 years old.
So we have the estimate that's come in, which is 21,000. And it's kind of a recap of the drawings that we've discussed on multiple occasions.
Has not. I believe it got kicked back for cost changes that were in it for modifying of some of the engineer's estimate. So they kicked it back earlier this week and had to resubmit it again this week.
So that's the next hurdle.
Next hurdle is getting permitted. Yep. After permitting, getting it constructed.
And what's the time frame for turnaround with permits these days?
60 to 90 days. It's not a very fast turnaround time for
Yeah.
permitting right now.
So,
We've been applying pressure on permits across the board and we have not been having a lot of great success.
Once you get the permit, then what's the time? to do it?
Yeah, it's got to go out for bid for construction.
Okay. I hope I live long enough to see it.
So once you go out for bid, get somebody on board to construct it, then mobilization, get them out to do the work. Work probably won't take that significant amount of time actually once they start. So it'll be a less than 30-day project.
That was the end of the year.
Trying,
The end of the year.
we're trying. Permitting has a big
And a
impact on
calendar
that one.
year, right?
Yeah.
You mean end of calendar year? Yeah. Okay.
Personally, we're aiming to try to get it done while everybody, we're not in season. I don't want to have the road ripped up during peak season here.
Yeah.
I'd prefer not to have that headache.
That's just gonna be nasty. Whenever it is, it's gonna be nasty.
This is
Yeah.
Daniel Fleming. Who gave us these cost estimates?
FTE.
This is Randy Botherston. Daniel, this seems pretty high compared to their initial talk. They suggested to us that the concrete basic one, Fort Myers standard would be more like $10,000. Now, we have a couple of, I know these posts with a sign are probably $4,000 a piece. I don't know if those posts could be reused and a different sign could be made, but I'm a little surprised with this.
It's a standard Fort Myers.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
standard, and so there should be no issue with permitting. And that was an estimate we got before. So is this still an estimate before you get a quote for PPAC to
Correct.
consider?
Well, we'll have to move forward for the actual RFP for the proposal with the engineering's estimate. It's the best guess from the engineer based on past practice, materials, and current market values. It's their best swag at it, to be honest. And
Okay.
it hasn't been as accurate lately. I think a lot of inflation over the past 3 or 4 years have skewed how people do their from one engineer to the next. What you get for an estimated engineering probable cost varies greatly. So it's their best dollar sign that they can associate with this project.
This is before the actual term.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah. Right there.
Yeah.
This is the 4-way stops over here.
Well, it's the worst that Eco driving around.
This is prior to coming
This
to
is
the
Vita,
intersection
right.
of,
That's what I call it. That looks like it's in the middle of the road.
so it's heading, it's before the intersection, heading toward the town. center.
Right.
It's where the rumble
Pretty much
strips,
in the position where the rumble strips.
rumble strips are
Yeah.
currently at.
Yeah.
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 Just on
The-
that one
the first
side.
step.
That's not what I thought. So,
Okay. Any other questions? All right, sounds good. Okay, member items and report. Morning. Or leave the, I don't know how to say it, MUFD, how do you say it?
Yeah.
MUFD. The standard compliance signs in place per FDOT standards and reduce the overhead entryway sign size.
So a great debate has gone on back and
Oh, yeah.
forth about what constitutes a multi-use lane, speed limit under 35 mile per hour, classification of the road here. Dean and I have been going back and forth at great lengths about what the roadways here really constitute in the MUFD standards. He's got an interpretation. I've got an interpretation. I went with the more stringent version of the interpretation. Dean is looking and requesting to bring it down. I've attached in here, because this was an item that Dean had a put on the agenda, while his item didn't have the substantial backing. It didn't have the actual FDOT standards or the MUCD standards. So I pulled the MUCD standards and highlighted the sections that are relevant to us per the signs. With that being said, again, it's how you want to interpret it. There's some flexibility to go up or down depending on, actually, if you wanted to be more stringent, the actual MUCD standards were published in December of 2023. Signs are actually undersized because I did it off of the previous 2013 standards. So with a breath, there is some flexibility in there, and I'm tired of fighting this. So I have gone out and I've asked a company called GSI Mailbox and Signs. They're one of the vendors like Lycans that commonplace out here in Gateway that do signs. I asked them to come out earlier this week on Tuesday. I was like, hey, take me out of the equation. This is the situation. The guardhouse has been struck 3 times. We put in signs. We did it to what we thought was MUCD standards, FDOT standards, because it is I know everybody likes to think it's Pelican's Road. It's a quasi-governmental owned road owned by GSCDD, and so was the guardhouse. So we were trying to do it to the standards, and that those standards were obviously what you see outside now. And actually, we're still falling short because in a run-up to a warning sign, an overhead sign, you're supposed to have 2 warning signs prior to it, 50 feet apart. We've limited that down to 1 now. There's one on the entry and there's one on the exit. It's a large sign, it's oversized. But I asked that independent contractor who does signs every single day, I was like, hey, give me an estimate so that I can get out of the sign business at the guardhouse. That individual came back, outlined all of the items. So sign color has a matter. It means something. Yellow is a warning sign. White is a regulatory law. That's your speed limit sign. Fasten your seatbelt, no cell phones. So changing the color of the signs is not really feasible based off of MUCD standards, but we could reduce some of those sizes and signs. And he came back with a quote that was roughly $2,600, well, $2,670, in order to not only replace, but to reduce some of the sizes there. Because again, personally, I'm tired of the back and forth interpretation of MUCD standards. I just wanted to take myself out of the equation altogether and have somebody that was an independent person come in and have a proposal given to us. So as you can see, the 36-inch signs for low clearance, the ones that are post mounted, so on the fancy posts, the diamonds, taking that down from a 36 down to a 30-inch, still remains yellow with a black backdrop for lettering. They're going to reuse the current post, so no change there. And there's a plate that goes around it. They got to replace that plate. There's 2 of those units, $1,050 for it.
There's still 2 diamonds?
There's 2 diamonds. There's one on the entryway coming in and there's one on the exit way. Even though we don't use said underpass overhang on the exit, just for compliancy, I had 2 signs. We wanted to downsize it a little so that there wasn't 2 signs for warning coming in. So I just replaced that one onto the other side. Same with the truck stay right. So it's standardized. Well, you would hope, but so it's standardized on the entryway and the exit way. You have a trucks keep right. You have a diamond for overhead, 9'6" on both sides, in and out. The comment came up with the same contractor about there's a lot of cluttering of signs as you approach from tree line inward to the guardhouse, and there were some options that were put in here to consolidate some signs, so less clutter. You're not just being hit by signs and being desensitized by all the signs. So you can go through and you can see some of the signs, the 36 by 48 that nobody likes, going down to a 24 by 30. And what else?
More consistent with the other signs, warning signs and that.
I think it would bring you back a little bit closer to those tolerances, I think people will be a little bit happier. I can get out of the business of trying to do signs and I can use my guys to do something else, anything else. There were some optional products here that were English to Spanish if you guys wanted it. Some reduce and sign clutter, you know, combining the stop here and residence guest signs on the entryway. And then to the right-hand side for 650, and then reduce some more sign clutter for the golf cart community and speed limit signs. So
Are those 3 boxes already in that total 2600?
yeah, total, this is, I'd have,
Well, it says
no, it's not. Those are additional add-ons. So for additional add-ons, you could do that. Not that we can make a decision today, but I wanted you to see options that Dean or I, neither one of us were in the middle of it. We had a third party come out that does this on a regular and give a proposal. Now, while I was on site with the guy that came out to do this, he was like, the signs meet standards now, and I would, you know, obviously I would leave them alone. That would be my recommendation, but if you want a smaller sign, we could go with a smaller sign. And I was like, hey, take me out of the equation. I don't want to be a part of it. I want to be unbiased in this because I really don't care what size signs are there. Well, the problem was there was a lot of I'll say command influence from above me telling me to get things up, so we got them up per the standard. Yeah. Don't worry, next time I'll drag my feet.
That's the fastest thing that's ever happened.
Well, this will be fast too after if we decide to go with this option. If you wanted to go with it, I got this literally yesterday afternoon, so I wasn't able to put it as part of agenda item. I'll bring it forward to the next meeting.
Feedback on it?
Yeah.
It's really died down.
The only thing I've heard is what Mark said,
Which was.
that people were liking it. I mean, that's
I
what I
don't
read.
know if they like it. They got used to it.
Yeah.
This is Danny Fund. That's what, in their assessment, was there an option to put some kind of an audible device to the guard shack that there's an oversized vehicle coming in? Have we looked at that in the engineering side? Or I know it's gonna be tough because you have the right.
We didn't look at it, but I could see if they have that capacity.
That would resolve some of the issues going back to the gatehouse, that oversized vehicles coming in.
The one item that he did discuss while he was on site with me was, you're not gonna like it because it's aesthetically, it's not an appealing item. It's before you come into the guard shack, having a riser, much like you would at like Starbucks or McDonald's, that you would hit prior to getting anywhere near the guard shack, so you would know you've reached your thresholds. As a smart device has gone, no, we haven't gone any further with that. But I would love, as we get into scoping for the Wiser contract, to look at possibly adding some additional supplemental pricing items in there for the tabulations for bid pricing to incorporate said devices, because there's a lot of the companies now, like when we talk hanging bar, flashing stop signs, sensors that'll have a light veil that if you exceed certain light veil will shut down the lane, things along those lines. Because I know when we talked with, what was it, Securitas, they've got a whole lot of new technology out now that's available for a community to install, and it's a part of their contract. So maybe that's a good time as we're doing this RFP for this next, to maybe address some of those items.
They're available, just a matter of getting the right company to.
Yeah.
I already spent $3,000. Really complaining.
Well, let's bring it forward to the
It'll be in
next
the next
agenda
meeting,
and
yeah.
then we can.
But just wanted to, show the due diligence, because
Yeah,
I
thank you.
feel that Dean felt like he was being ignored, and he was not. It was more along the lines of like, I brought it to the committee a couple of times, and when I talked about liability and accepting risk, nobody wanted to straight out tell me what it was that they wanted. And instead they wanted to make emails behind the scenes to try to probe me to get something done. And I'm like, it doesn't get done unless it's an approved by the committee item for me, because it is a safety issue.
Except for the first installation.
First installation met standards.
No,
Yeah. But that was the directive from a district manager to move, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, terrific. Okay, so we'll talk about that in our next meeting.
Mhm.
Finally, Cypress Grove and Prado Roundabout. We have pictures this time. We had one picture, maybe two pictures last time. And then I know quite a few of us ended up at the roundabout at the same time.
So this was an item that inadvertently hit my radar because, God, what was the community that's just on the other side of the bridge there? What is it? Casella had asked, there was a water valve that over time, there was a cement pad that was underneath said bricks, pavers, everything else had settled, and there was a tripping hazard for that water valve. So there was a nice like 2 foot by 2 foot concrete raised set of brick pavers in-house. My team has taken care of and fixed. But when we went to go do that assessment, we originally did this assessment on the roundabout just outside of that community. And we just got done striping. We just got done putting new signs and a new crosswalk in that roundabout there. The next item was to look at the lifespan of the brick pavers that are currently in the inner ring of that roundabout. And they were in some pretty rough shape. So a while back, I had the same people who did the entryway for Matarita 2, Timo Brothers. And them came out to do a assessment of it and give a dollar sign. I haven't hung it in here because I really wanted to start socializing that this is the, disrepair of the roundabout and the brick pavers. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of brick pavers in anywhere that there's high traffic, but community standards dictate that we use brick pavers. So just wanted to bring something to your attention and have an item on the forefront of your mind.
Got a cost estimate? This is it, two comments. One is, me, this might be a good project to put in the bucket for 25 as a possible road improvement. Question is, the pavers on the inside of that curve, basically, is that road responsibility or is that
Landscape.
landscape responsibility?
Typically, the standard across the board is the inner ring of any roundabout is a landscaping item. But we've historically been handling road items here in this committee, so.
Keep it here for.
This is Jay Gann. Do you have like an internal?
So there's 4 of them. They all have those interior pavers that are more decorative part of the landscaping.
Yeah.
Travel roads.
I do have one proposal on this one, but I wanted to see what we had for appetite before I started going out for more proposals. It fell in line with all the other works that you've seen so far for brick pavers, somewhere in that $20,000 to $30,000 range. Well, this one, there's a valley gutter issue. 1/3 of the valley gutter around that roundabout is completely chipped out and cracked to a point that it needs to be replaced. A good 1/3. So.
And this is at this intersection, isn't there still some ramps that need to be put in, concrete ramps to go up in regards to the bike lane project? And much of that intersection has been completed, but there were to be some.
I believe the bike lanes are just nothing but painting and striping. I'd have to go back and look at the plans for the bikes.
Would that? You don't recall?
It'll be separate.
No, because
This is the interior of the roundabout. Yeah.
outside. The bike lanes are really on the outside of the road, where this is on the inside.
And it's going to be a different
So
subset of.
It was two different items, but
Right.
with the bike lanes, it was also then determined that FTE said that we needed to have bike lanes or ramps go up to the sidewalk and then they walk across. So I'm not sure if this interferes or it could be done in conjunction with that.
Well, it doesn't interfere with it at all.
Seems separate.
They're slightly separate. Randy, I owe you. I'll go back and look at
There
the.
was a lot of attention paid to that originally. And
Well, I've seen a lot of the new. There's the one down by Prado is only 2 years old, and that one is looking rough already. The brick pavers down in that roundabout, and that's the entirety of the roundabout, not just the inner ring. Brick pavers with high weight vehicles and high traffic areas are always going to get
You would
beat.
think that the four-way stop is that's an awful destroyed.
Well, four-way stop, I think you got people coming to a complete or somewhat of a complete stop. I've seen a lot of people here drive.
Okay,
When people carry speed into those turns for the roundabouts, that's where the wear and tear comes from. It's where they're carrying speed.
I think, this is Danny Clement, I think for the committee to take on total responsibility for the interior of the roundabout might be just overbearing for us, something that we should not even address right now as far as our expense. Determine what's going on. If the bricks, my understanding is these bricks are not readily available. So apparently Timo has to go outside.
Yeah,
to get them. And that's gonna be an abnormal expense.
I asked him, I originally, when we had the conversation, because I was curious, I wanted to see what, say the higher PSI concrete pour that is then stamped looks like. So it's got an aesthetic of looking like a brick paver, but really it's, a poured concrete, much like the fountain over off of Griffin and Gateway that we just put in. All that red concrete that's around that fountain is a good 1.5 feet, 2 foot of reinforced rebar concrete. That's just a colored variation. And you don't even want to know, that was in the $200,000 range because it's just very expensive to do it that way versus doing a different, either a brick paver or another concrete pour. Personally, I don't see a reason why you couldn't take the brick pavers out, extend the grass and the landscaping, and just stay with the valley gutter around it. That's another option as well. But you'd have to do minor repairs to the valley gutters that are there.
Valley gutters and the curbing, can you patch the curbing around?
You can. Yeah. It's actually, if you look at it, it looks like it's already been 2/3 patched. Like every 4 foot looks like somebody's cut out a segment and redone some of the valley gutter in it. I know why they went with brick pavers on the inner circle there. It was obviously there's overlap, people run over it and they just tear up sod. So there's
All four, the roundabout, the roundabouts, and the two cul-de-sacs.
Radio Casella, Costello.
They all have the same brick paver.
But this is before you even get to the cell. This is Arena, Prado, and Cypress Grove. So it's not a Casella.
But the Casella roundabout, the two cul-de-sacs in Casella all have the same brick paver.
they do. And all those have been fixed. The ones that are in Casella, any of the items that were in there done, but it did come up while I was out there doing the site exploitation. And I was like, all right, let me look at this one as well. Cause we just spent all this money on striping with McShay, lichens for signs, dropping from 2-lane to 1 lane into that roundabout with a turn lane. And we just put in a crosswalk there. There's still a line of sight issue with landscaping that needs to be addressed so that people can actually see people come across that new crosswalk that we put in. While I was there, I was like, well, I'm already looking at this other roundabout that's less than 400 feet, across the little bridge. I'll take an assessment of this one. And when I did that, I was like, wow, it's pretty beat. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention and possibly put it on the project list. It's not like it's going anywhere, going to get any worse, any faster if we don't approach it in the near future. But it's something to put on the radar. And if we want to move it forward again, if you want me to proceed, I can go and get more proposals. I don't need a motion for me to go get more proposals on getting it
Why don't you go ahead
done
and
for
do
brick
that?
pavers. I'll see if I can come back with 3 proposals in the next meeting.
Okay, that's all that was on the agenda. I have one item I'd like to bring up that was not on the agenda. And that was just to get some status on the RFP, the Access Control Security RFP, because according to the schedule, I think the attorney review was due today, and then we were going to bid let on the 30th. I was just wondering how all that was going. Do we know?
Oh, let's see. I don't think that it's gone out yet. But I
You know if it's gone through attorney review? Is that
Yeah, I
what
believe it
that-
has gone through attorney review.
Okay.
Laura, can you speak on whether or not the RFP for Wiser has made it through legal review?
It's not made it through legal review. It is currently in legal review.
I know I've seen emails coming back and forth with revisions and verbiage, but it's getting close.
Okay,
And I think we're still on timeline to meet our posting date.
which is the 30th.
Yeah, the 30th.
Okay.
Yep, to the best of my knowledge, that's correct, because Chelsea and I had a meeting with Tony and Zach yesterday, and he said he's working on it.
Okay. That answers
Just
my
a Daniel
question.
Clemens, as a side note, I submitted to Chelsea a list of the locations, like communities and amenities here in the town center. I broke it down, community list
Okay.
and the amenities here in the town center. Inclusive. The only thing I didn't add to it was the addresses of each of the locations, like the property center, administrative office,
Yeah.
NCC.
Are these the bus stations that said that?
Yes.
Okay.
That list is already represented.
Okay, is that something to maybe forward to Georgia and have it?
Well, Georgia, yeah, they have it.
Okay, can we get
They
it
have it.
distributed to
It
the
was
team?
sent to them yesterday or this morning. I forget.
Oh, it's okay,
It was
but
sent- it was sent
the,
out.
okay, but was it sent out to the committee?
No, just to
Yeah,
the distribution.
The request was, can we get that forwarded out to the committee? Because that's probably
Right.
something the rest of us would like to see as well.
Georgia would have to do that.
What
Georgia,
was
would you-
that that's gonna get, that you asked to have forwarded?
The punch list that Danny sent on to you guys yesterday, today, with all the different places that we're proposing get checked by the rover.
Oh, I think Tony needs to review that as well. I think it's sitting with Chelsea, but she's on another call.
It can be done later. It doesn't have to be done right now, whenever. It's fine.
Okay.
Whoever and whenever. This is on, well, I mean, it's not urgent that it's done now, but I think that we've had so much discussion about it as a team. I think it would be handy if
Yeah,
everyone.
I think it's important to have that included when we do the scope, because I mean, you're gonna require them to do X amount of stops and they may base their pricing on that, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else on that RFP? Anything else people would like to discuss?
Status of the bike lane design.
I believe we're pushing to 100%. We were past 90%. We're looking at 100. That one hasn't been permitted yet at all. I know that. So
That's in the-
yeah, I have yet to see said 100%. Not saying that it doesn't exist. I've seen the 90%, but I haven't seen the 100%.
Okay.
One general comment from the group, we now have a full-time employee for maintenance and health reserve. And I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. And the information to the chairman, because the chairman should be making up the work schedule for what the subcommittee's work on. Coordinate that.
I-
You got ideas?
I shot out a note the other day and I made sure all the chairs were attached on it. And it was, here's what the hours I've past week, how I'm tracking it. And if you've got any works that fall into a GSCDD asset that you'd like to see addressed, get those items to me and I'll coordinate it with the team to get it knocked out.
The chair should be the driving.
So send that through Georgia. I'm Safety Committee 7 or whatever the email I, I'm number 7.
You can thank Dean for that. They had a chair and a vice chair email slated, and then when he stepped down, he didn't want to lose his emails, so they just swapped the numbering around.
Yeah, and then Genovi or what the name of the provider is, picked it all up for me.
Yeah.
It's been that.
But I think we've been having really good, clear communications
I
back
think
and
so.
forth as items come up. I think we're doing a really good job of
Yeah.
staying in tandem and making sure that things are becoming agenda items and addressing them as they come through.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
What's the next meeting?
Next meeting.
The next meeting is. Check my calendar. Thursday, June,
27?
I think so. Yep, 27, 11 to 1. And I believe we still have this room. And for the agenda, I think we've moved forward the Bellagio discussion, the project list, vice chair, warning sign proposal, and then just put in roundabout.
Whatever comes out of the workshop.
What workshop?
That was his morning.
Oh,
Catching up
okay.
with him.
That's fine. And then I'm just gonna put status on some of these projects, such as the bike lane and the speed hump, I think. And the RFP.
You'd have to ask your vendor. FTE. It's been about the designer. It's been about the design and then trying to get it through permitting now that they've gotten it through design.
Yeah, that probably got approved about the same time the speed hump did, didn't it? Somewhere around there.
That's been one that's been in the pipeline since I've come on board.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so maybe we can just keep these types of projects top of mind. Not that it's gonna help us much if it's in permitting, but at least we know the status. All right, if there is nothing else,
Since it
Do
wasn't
we
a meeting,
make-
we don't even have to adjourn.
we don't even have to adjourn, but it's 12:17 and we're unofficially adjourning.